So good to see you here on a beautiful day for World Pork Expo. So thank you for taking time out for your schedules to be here. I'm Lori Stevermer. I'm the Customer Success Manager for Alltech, and I'm also past president, immediate past president of the National Pork Producers Council. So I am excited for today's seminar. We have got a great panel. It's going to be a great discussion, and we are going to take questions from the group later on. So as we go along, if a question comes down, just remember it in your mind, because we do want you to be able to participate. So, I look out the crowd here. I know you're all involved with agriculture, and we feel the challenges in agriculture with the animal activists, right? Everything that we're doing, we seem to get some pushback, whether it's in the arena of public policy, opinions, or now more in the legislative and political arenas. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that and what's happening and some of the challenges there. We are also going to talk about how do we change the narrative as individuals? What can we do? And how do we leverage that positive image, that trust that consumers have of us as farmers? So I've had the pleasure of working with all these individuals in some capacity, and so I'm excited for them, and I truly appreciate you all being part of our panel. I am going to let them introduce themselves. So I'm going to start with you, Susanna Elliott. Please introduce yourself to the group.
Thank you, Lori. It's a pleasure to be here and to see so many of you coming in to join us. I have been with Alltech for 18 years, based at our headquarters in Kentucky, just outside of Lexington, where it's all bourbon, horses, and basketball. I lead our global communications and marketing team. And I also have the privilege of serving the industry on a few different boards, one of them being UC Davis Clear Center. A few friends in the audience today. We had Dr. Frank Mitloner, I think, on last year's panel, and they are, of course, completely focused on both the science and the communication and ensuring those two are brought together. But I also serve on the American Feed Industry Association Executive Committee and the iFeeder Board of Trustees, which focuses on research and education within the industry.
Excellent. Kylee?
Sure. Thanks, Lori. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kylee Deniz. I serve as the Executive Director of the Oklahoma Pork Council and have had the pleasure of serving in that capacity for since March of 2021, and have a rock star team, which is here in the room, and great producers also here in the room as I look around. At Oklahoma Pork, we have 4 strategic intentions ranging from freedom to operate for our farmers, which would be really kind of the policy, all the way to image enhancement, where it's telling the story, building trust with individuals. Prior to working at at Oklahoma Pork, I worked at the National Pork Board and was really focused on the storytelling piece, directly connecting with consumers wherever they were, with the message they needed on the platform, right, AKA your cell phone, and really enjoyed that opportunity. And prior to that, worked at an advertising agency. So my background is largely in this reputation management, storytelling space, but really today love the honor of serving Oklahoma pig farmers.
All right, Andy.
So, good afternoon. If you're standing, there are some seats here if you want them. It's okay. I know it can be intimidating coming up to the front. So I'm Andy Curliss. I work at the National Pork Producers Council, VP of Strategic Engagement. What is that? That is purposefully nondescript, because I don't really want you to know what I do. And so maybe I'll tell you how I got there. I spent 20 years as an investigative reporter in North Carolina, and I was focused on corrupt politicians and exposing them and sending them to jail where they belonged, and was pretty good at that. And I decided at a certain point, I had a daughter, I didn't want to write about everything that was bad all the time. And so I decided I was going to write about something good, and I investigated, well, what's good going on in North Carolina, where I'm from? And agriculture, in my estimation, was one of those things. And so I called up a hog farmer, and I said, hey, I'm Andy Curliss, I'm with the News and Observer, and I'd like to spend a year with you following a pig from birth to the plate. And as you might imagine, I had a lot of slammed doors. Nobody wanted to talk to the investigative reporter. But through a lot of conversation, I did that. and I followed a pig. I spent a year following a pig from beginning to end. And the plate was Tokyo. And so I did a 4-part series on that. And that launched me off into a whole different world. I was CEO of the North Carolina Pork Council. I worked at Smithfield Foods in corporate affairs and communications there. I took a detour to a data analytics software company in RTP, focused in agriculture. And now I'm at NPPC, all along focused on research and understanding and dealing with those who are a threat to our industry. That is my focus.
Thank you, Andy. And as you can see, all three individuals really have a rich history and experience of the industry and agriculture, which is going to be helpful. Many of you were at our showing last night of the World Without Cows documentary. Thank you for those that came. For those of you that were unable to make it, we have a 3-minute kind of highlight of that documentary that we would like to share with you right now.
The fabric of nature hangs in the balance because our planet is under threat, and one creature is at the center of it all.
Every day between now and 2050, it gets harder to feed the world.
We have had the mantra pounded into us, you gotta produce more, you gotta feed the world.
If we keep eating animal products on this scale, climate change continues to be exacerbated.
Many people would say cows are the worst thing in the world for the climate.
People say, let's just get rid of livestock and grow crops instead. That's not possible.
We're really missing the bigger picture.
In a world without cows, we may be giving up one of our best tools to help heal the planet.
If we want to truly mitigate climate change, we need animals on the landscape. How do we pull that carbon out of the atmosphere and put it back into the soil? That's where livestock come in.
Agriculture holds the key to saving our planet.
What really happens if you take all the cows away?
Are we better off in a world without cows?
All right, Susanna, I'm going to start with you first, because you've been a big part of World Without Cows. Tell us a little bit about how it became and what the reaction has been so far.
It's been a journey that at times we wondered if we were ever going to have a documentary that was released. But I think the story actually begins with Alltech's founding culture and spirit. We were founded by an Irishman, a scientist, who is also just as much a storyteller. I think that runs hot in the Irish DNA. And so he invested early in the importance of communication within our business and the importance of communication of science and agriculture. And within our business, probably much like you in your own circles, every time a negative news article was coming out that misrepresented agriculture, there was frustration across the business, sharing of links saying, what are we going to do? How are we going to respond? And a lot of those landed at my desk because of our team working in communications. And it is frustrating to just simply spend your time responding. You always feel like you're a step behind, you're chasing your tail. And we had talked for a while about perhaps we would do a documentary because we have journalists who work for us, videographers and team members that we had on staff, and we considered the idea. But the tipping point was Super Bowl 2021. I don't know if any of you remember the commercial where the CEO of an oat juice company sat in the middle of a field at a keyboard and extolled the virtues of a world without cows. And my phone lit up. With messages from our CEO saying, I'm done, that's enough, this is an absolute shame, what are we gonna do about it? And that very week then, we took 2 of our team members who had long careers in journalism, one at Networks, another one as a combat journalist, and said, you guys have a new job, and it's to answer the question, are we better off in a world without cows? And we gave them some leads, and then we pretty much got out of their way and trusted them as journalists to go tell the story. And that took them 3.5 years visiting more than 40 locations globally, where they explored the implications economically, culturally, nutritionally, environmentally. And so we just wrapped up that documentary in August. It was done almost entirely in-house. We did get a little help on color grading the documentary from an external agency, but everything else was done in-house and through the lens of these journalists and how they would tell the story as journalists. And so now the documentary is available in 19 different languages, fully in Spanish as well. And we're in the process of learning how to do distribution of a full-length documentary. And it's a challenge when you don't have a celebrity involved and you're also an unknown entity. And so our first part of this process has been entering it into film festivals globally, because that's how you build kind of credibility, your street cred, as you try to work on distribution. And we've been delighted to be nominated, not only accepted into a wide variety of film fests, but also nominated for Best Documentary at some of those film fests. For me, the most exciting one was being accepted into the Beverly Hills Film Fest, because that is held at Mann's Chinese Theater. And so to see our documentary there was just an absolute pinch me moment, because as we're going through this process, we're working with those who are deep in the entertainment industry, who have no background in ag, no connection to ag, and they keep telling us, you are going to have an uphill battle, because there is an ideology, and they refer to it as being held religiously. That does not like your viewpoint. And so we always kind of figured that was the fact, but there's been confirmation of that. So to have it playing there at Mann's Chinese Theater was very significant. And it's creating a lot of conversation, which is exactly what we hoped would be the case. And even with audiences that are not audiences that would typically have a conversation with many of us. One of the first film festivals we were in was San Pedro, California. And our team showed up, and they were wearing the World Without Cows shirts. And the film festival organizer said, "Oh, you're the vegan people." And our team immediately thought, did you actually watch the documentary? But great that we got in, and it ended up being the most well-attended documentary in the environmental section, but it was an audience that was largely full of mostly Californian vegan lifestyle. And so our team watched intently, because we thought, oh my goodness, are we gonna be doing conflict resolution after this documentary airs? But instead, we saw them talking with each other the whole time, engaging, and one woman even afterwards raised her hand and said, I have never seen this side of the story. I've never seen this point of view. Thank you, and how can I help you? And I couldn't have scripted a better response to the documentary. And that's exactly what we hope happens, is that you step back, you realize there's a wider lens on a lot of these conversations we're having around cows and our planet, and hopefully more dialogue ensues as a result.
Absolutely. Kylee and Andy, I'd be interested in your responses. You've had a chance to look at the documentary. Thoughts?
Go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, well, I enjoyed attending the showing last night, and in my opinion, Alltech does it well, right? When Alltech does something, you all just do it very well. And to see the documentary in the cattle sale ring, talking about a world without cows and the varying perspectives was just so interesting, number one. But number two, I'm just so proud of Alltech and your team for telling a whole story, right? It's very easy for us in agriculture to say, like, here's the story and the lens in which we think from. At the same time, you don't bring more people to the table. There's no conversation that goes any farther. And so I think the documentary did that very well. I am team pork, through and through. My husband's a beef producer. And as we were talking last night after watching the documentary, I said to him, you would be very proud of this. And he bantered back at me. He said, Kylee, where are you at, pork? And so I think there could be a pork version of a documentary coming soon. Whoever's going to do that, I don't know. But I enjoyed the opportunity to view it, and I think you all did it very well.
Okay.
I would just say, if you haven't seen it, you need to. And you use the word "the whole story," and there are the approach here was not to sugarcoat, right? There is plenty a voice given to those who oppose us.
Yes.
And that language, and when you first hear that, it can be jarring, but it's important to understand that is the message that is out there, and I just think the maturity to produce a piece that gives that voice and then answers it is really, really effective, how it was done. Yeah. Thank
you. Andy, I'm coming to you with the next question. So you mentioned the wholeness of the documentary and addresses misconceptions. Tell us a little bit about what you do, and I know you're kind of undercover here, but I mean, because you deal with an audience that is a lot of misperceptions and not very friendly to agriculture. So tell us a little bit more about what's out there from the opposition.
Oh, geez, how long do we have? So I would say this: there are certain groups that we know about and get mentioned in agriculture, but my research and where I spend my time is much different than that. I focus on funders, on who's funding this, and the areas that they're headed. There are very significant high net wealth individuals, foundations, 8-9 figure type wealth spending $10, $20, $50 million at a clip to oppose us. And so that's where I spend my time. And then educating the right audiences about that. It's hard to compete with that type of money, but when you start to focus in on audience and then who really matters here, that's how you can start to sort of, what is it about eating the elephant, right? You got to do it one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And so I kind of spend my time on, okay, what's the elephant look like? And now where's the first bite, the second bite, the third bite? Yeah.
Good. Kylee, Oklahoma, that's an ag state, right? No problems. Life is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, wait, maybe a little problems are creeping up.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit what's going on in Oklahoma.
Sure. It is. We've been on a bit of a road show recently because we have all of what you just talked about happening in the state of Oklahoma. And if you think of the dynamics of Oklahoma, you would say a rural state, 4 million people, right? Still pretty connected to agriculture, to the farm, to where their food comes from. You have a pro-ag governor. You've got incredible elected and appointed officials that see the value of agriculture, appreciate the hard work that goes into farming, whether it be pig farming or a crop. And we have an in-state group that's connected to out-of-state groups that are just doing some of the wildest things. And I know, Andy, you're kind of smirking here because you're tracking this and you're tracking Oklahoma, right?
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
And what we've experienced, Lori, is from sow housing legislation, which it's not really about how sows are housed. Instead, it's, how do we remove that opportunity for farmers, to an insert 52 pages in the Oklahoman and in the New York Times distributed in Oklahoma just 1 year ago on National Animal Rights Day. A documentary that they've produced that really, tries to tell the bad story of agriculture. And so we've had about 50 interactions with these groups. And Andy, I believe that you and I could say that these groups are the similar voices of Proposition 12 in California, Massachusetts Question 3, and all of these other places where ballot initiatives are popping up, whether it be Denver or Sonoma or places on the radar. So we have had our hands full, but so proud of our farmers and looking at one of our past presidents, right, that continue to show up and do the right thing on the farm every day and continue to open the barn doors of sharing that farm story, because if we don't, the other story is not an accurate story. It's not a science-based story. It's an emotional story that's inaccurate. So we've really been proactive on trying to continue and maybe better share the pork story in Oklahoma.
And you use the phrase share our story, and we talk about telling our story, and we absolutely have to do that, but I have to admit, I think there's some of us that if we hear that phrase one more time, we're gonna be like, oh, I'm kind of getting tired of that. But it's important, so give us an example. I'll start with you, Kylee, and then you, Andy. I mean, what has been effective in sharing our story, showing our story, telling our story? What are some tangible things that you can leave with the group here?
Sure. Well, I think you have to be everywhere to everyone at any point with the story they want to hear, right? And I look at our team up here. It is certainly from a digital perspective, like we have to be there, we have to be present, we have to be good. I want it to be entertaining and modern and right, have the soundbite. So it's that, but then I think of our farmers in the room, and whether you are a show pig producer or a large-scale commercial producer, sharing the story within communities is important. And in agriculture, right, we find value in a handshake, and we care what the person next to us thinks because we are people of integrity. And so there is a place for everybody to share their story. It doesn't just have to be on one medium. It can be person to person, and maybe a skeptic in your community just feeling a little bit better about pork production, eating meat in the case of our opposition group, and that's very effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And Andy, I would like your answer too, and I know you're a journalist, so stories, but you've also worked for an association. So what have you seen that's been effective?
I want to mention the film first, if I may.
Sure.
And there are farmers in this film, not associations, right? And they are authentic, they're real, and that is the most important, that we are human. Okay, so human and authentic, and that's in this film, and the more of that, the better. I also think we should all recognize the truth of the matter as it relates to farming and agriculture in the United States. This, no matter how you poll it, the sort of the gold standard in this space would be Gallup polls it every year, industry sector. Farming and agriculture is head and shoulders above every other sector. Restaurants sometimes. But we should recognize that the trust of the American people is there with farming and agriculture. That's why these groups constantly try to organize. That's why they need millions of dollars to attack us. But that also puts us in a different posture as we start to communicate. It's easy to be an attacker and just throw it against the wall. That's not who we are. That's not how we want to be. And so we do have constraints on how we share our story, tell our story. And I would come back to human, authentic. That's it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important reminder. Yeah.
Yeah.
Susanna, maybe from a little different view in terms of agribusiness, World Without Cows is being effective, but what are some other methods maybe? And maybe also two parts to that. What should be agribusiness's role in helping support farmers?
Yeah. Well, first, I love those points because for me, Kylee, it is a significant one that yes, we need a strong digital presence. We have to be there as people type in their questions to Google. And honestly, people probably ask no more honest questions to anywhere else in the world than they do to Google search. And so we need to be there. We need to be showing up there. But even more important are those conversations eye to eye, in person, as you build trust and credibility with those around you. Because I would add to the authenticity point that you made is that trust building, because we know that it takes such a long time to build and can be shattered in a moment. But so much of that is in our communities as well. But I think to your point, as much as we say producers tell your story, I think there's a responsibility for the rest of us in agribusiness to also give a platform to tell those stories, to provide cover to producers and bringing those stories together. And that's what we hope World Without Cows does, because there are many firsthand accounts from producers and ranchers represented within the documentary. And hopefully it builds momentum and credibility even by seeing all of those stories together, and even the different ways in which they are producing that same commitment to animal welfare, to the environment, to nutrition for all, but they may be doing it differently in different spaces around the world. And that's an important point for us as well, is that as we're considering from a policy perspective, decisions being made, we may be well-intended, but we may have very unintended consequences that we don't realize to some of the things that we're considering. So it's important that we're encouraging a broader conversation and having them go to producers to have those conversations. Because I think we're hearing time and time again that sometimes we just need to find the common ground, because we may have the same end in mind, but if we just pursue it with blinders on and we haven't involved the stakeholders going all the way back to the farm to say, we're under pressure from shareholders to do this, what would that mean to you? Then we can have much more, I think, robust solutions in the end to the challenges we face.
Sure, yeah. Kylee or Andy, any follow-up to getting agribusinesses involved or suggestions or from your perspective?
Sure. Yeah, I think we have a role. Every person in this room has a role in that trust factor. And I don't think we can just hope that people understand. I think we have to help people understand going forward. And so the work that you all are doing, again, this room of people, I think we all have some stake in this future of agriculture if we want it to be what it has the potential to be.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think I've said what, yeah.
All right. I am going to come back to you, though, because when we were prepping, you used the phrase David versus Goliath. And I think for a lot of us in agriculture as farmers, we do feel like David. And there's a lot of Goliaths out there. So how do we win in that situation? And I know you mentioned the authentic and truth, but is there anything you can build on that? As David, because David did win, right? David won in the Bible against Goliath. So how do we win as producers, as agriculture?
Well, and if we're talking about the narrative in particular, I think you just have to think of the audience, and there's different audiences. So we've heard here consumer, customer, political space, regulatory space, there's legal arenas. And so I think it's specific to the arena in which we are operating. And I think it requires an understanding of, let's talk about the consumer, for example. Kansas State does an amazing job of surveying consumers. And what do consumers care about? Taste, affordability, availability, and always at the last metric is environmental impact, okay? And, you know, if you care about environmental impact such that you're gonna make a purchasing decision, that option's available to you, right? And so to me, it's understanding what arena am I operating in, what is the message that needs to be delivered in that arena, and then doing that in a way that connects. That's different with a politician than it is with a regulator, and it's certainly different with a jury. We've all faced juries. And so that to me it's a complicated answer with some nuance to it, depending on where you're operating.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it is more complex, right? Our story, our methods change depending which audience we're communicating to. So, yeah. Kylee, the work you've done in the States, any other advice, or I should say any advice for any other states that might be seeing this on their horizon? You know, what would you tell them?
Sure. Well, Oklahoma Pork Council would be one of 42 state pork associations. And the pork associations are present when there are pigs, right? When there are pigs and farmers, there's a state pork association. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of people in states where there are not a lot of pigs. So we are absent of some kind of an association. And I think to the point of the agribusiness and this room of individuals vested in agriculture, we all have a role. So if I was to give some advice to another state pork association, a producer, an attendee of this room, I would say that you all do have a role in this, right? We can't go at this alone, and every piece of the puzzle does matter, because we know the opposition is great. It's well-funded, it's a machine today. And those of us in this room, right, we care about working hard with our head down and have an ultimate goal of taking a pig across the finish line or feeding the world, whatever that might be. And so I do think to give some advice to another state or to a group that cares about the future of agriculture would be really taking up the mantle and thinking about how you can do the work on behalf of the industry.
Can I jump in?
Sure, absolutely.
So you mentioned Denver, California. So there were 2 ballot initiatives that just ran in this last election in November. I know you all were paying close attention to them and the other one, the other election, Trump and what's her name, Harris. So, but there were two elections, Denver and Sonoma County, about agribusiness. One was to ban slaughterhouses in the city and county of Denver, and the other was to ban factory farms, CAFOs, in Sonoma. That's where you meet on the battlefield, David versus Goliath, right? And let's sort it out, and there's a scoreboard at the end. Now, I'll focus on Denver for 1 second. The way agriculture would run that campaign would have been an absolute loser, okay? A complete loser.
No disrespect.
No, I'm just telling you, this is what my point on, you have to understand the audience and the message and what's going to get you to. And so those conversations with our friends in Colorado, livestock producers and so on, wanted to run a livestock and farming and ranching campaign in Denver. Denver electorate doesn't care about that. The campaign in Denver was about the workers in that plant, okay? In Sonoma, it was about those local farms, okay? Large scale, by the way, large scale farms, but those local farms. The result in coalition building, 85% were with us in Sonoma County, California. Said, large scale factory farms, we are 85% with you, okay? 75% for Harris in that election, just to give you a sense. In Denver, it was 72% for Harris, and we won there. They're not going to ban slaughterhouses in Denver, 64%. Okay, so when the confidence of when we go talk about what we do, really, right? Take people through those plants, talk about what a large farm is, the moral high ground of feeding people affordably. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. Absolutely nothing. That is our moral high ground, and we ought to own it. And we should have confidence that when we do engage in that way, we also win. We also win.
I think there's an importance of communication. Sometimes we need to focus on ensuring that it's understood, because we can get caught up in a lot of industry language. I've been part of them, sitting in the boards and associations where we talk about messaging that we're using terms that I know are not going to be understood because that's just what we're used to, and we accept it's common language to us. So I think that's a really critical point, is making sure that that communication is understood. Otherwise, it really hasn't taken place unless we brought them along in that conversation. But also finding the common ground, as you talked about, because we've even seen this in World Without Cows. Is I may be committed to a certain diet lifestyle, but I can agree with the social justice idea of we need nutrition for all. And if we can't produce enough vegetables on marginal land, then yes, we do need livestock. And so there are ways to find a point of alignment and common ground, as I think you mentioned.
Yeah. And going back to the Denver slaughterhouse ban, Andy, I will say you're right. And I think also we have to think maybe a little bit broader and around the horizon, right? Because I remember as a board member when we first talked about that and the opportunity to fund it, it's a lamb slaughter plant, right? And so you're like, okay, why should we as pork producers and a board that's entrusted with pork producers' money get involved in an issue like that? But then when you look around and you look at what the activists were trying to do, and if they were successful, the long-term implications of that, not just to the lamb industry, but to the pork industry, then it was like, yes, we need to collaborate and get involved because this could affect all of us.
Yeah, and that was part of my research in that campaign, was to obtain the documents of those who oppose us, and I was able to do that legally, I should say. And their plan is to test out their theories and ideas at the local level with a plan of, in 2030, 2032, statewide factory farming bans. That's where they're headed. It's in their documents. That's why it's important for us to be engaged now. Yeah.
Excellent. So you cited two good examples that the pork industry won or livestock won. I think we can also look at other challenges that maybe overwhelm us. But for each of you, what gives you hope for the future? And I'll start with you, Susanna, and then just To the audience, we're going to have questions in a little bit, so I'm just giving you a heads up. We're going to come with questions. So, excuse me, Susanna,
Yes,
to you,
yeah.
what gives you hope for the future?
So you mentioned the Gallup poll. Another one that I follow pretty closely is from Edelman, which is a large PR firm. And every year they publish the Trust Barometer, and they publish this for a long stretch of time. They survey 28,000 people over a stretch of October, November time, and then publish the results at the start of the year. And for a long time, they've been tracking an erosion of trust that has been taking place with a lot of the institutions that we grew up trusting are no longer being trusted, and people feel like they are being purposely misled by businesses, by universities, institutions, and so on. And so that's the bleak picture. And part of that bleak picture, too, is that trust, that sense that I am being misled is now leading to a sense of grievance. So 6 out of 10 people feel this sense of grievance. And 4 out of 10, as a result of that, would justify activist sort of action. What's even scarier is 1 out of 2 of young adults ages 18 through 34 would take hostile activism, which includes spreading misinformation, acts of violence. That's a scary stat, 1 out of every 2. But they also look at the sectors, across the board, food and ag was increasing. In complete opposition, it was like a seesaw in comparison, that we were seeing numbers go up of trust in food and ag, and it was kind of at all different points in the chain and across countries. And so I think when we talk about the value of the producer voice, it is there. And I hope that, through things like World Without Cows, we're creating a forum to bring that producer voice to the forefront so that more people who are growing up very disconnected from the farm, from agriculture, are hearing that producer voice.
Yeah. Kylee? Yeah. And I know you're an upbeat person. You're positive. Yeah. So this shouldn't be hard for you. What gives you hope?
Yeah. What gives me hope is we produce a safe, affordable, nutritious, delicious product that people love, and great people produce it. And so every day when things are hard, thinking back to the plate or to the farm gate, there's just so much to be thankful for, so much hope to be had. But it does take all of us really leaning into this, because we know there are so many folks that are against us.
Yeah.
Bacon gives me hope. It's about every morning.
I think Pork Board has some bacon shirts. We need to get you a bacon shirt, yeah.
Or some socks with bacon on them. That'd be good.
He's going to send your socks. Yeah.
Okay, I mentioned, so if I'm ever feeling depressed, I just mentioned 2 election results, 85 and 65. That's pretty good. Yeah. I mentioned Gallup polling. We're plus like 50 in Gallup polling. That means, well, the last election, Trump was plus 1.5. Okay, spent $3 billion, ended up plus 1. We're plus 47. So that gives me hope. And then if I'm ever really depressed, I just go to my Chick-fil-A at about noon, and you'll see them wrapped around the building about 4 times. And if you go across the street, Arby's, right, we got the meat, and they got it all on their shirts and everything. And to your point, product, people love what we do. They love farmers, they love agriculture, and they love our products. And the noise that we spend so much time on is really, in the great big wide world, it's just not there like we see it, okay? It has a lot of money behind it and a lot of organization, don't get me wrong. But in the wide world, that's why those data points are what they are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Excellent.
And can I say one other thing?
Absolutely, absolutely.
If I'm really, really depressed, I just go spend time with our other sectors, okay? And you think we got it bad? Go to the chemistry meetings. There are laws trying to ban every last thing they've got, okay? I'm talking about plastic bags and straws. Straws aren't going to get in the ocean from Kansas. They're trying to ban them, or Missouri or somewhere like that. It'll take a long time to get that straw into the ocean from St. Louis. And so when you go spend time in these other sectors, their problems are off the charts. I just sit there and I go, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get back to agriculture.
Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, we're so focused on our industry like we should be, but sometimes you do have to look at some other industries and see what's going on there and say, yeah could be worse. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. I know we have some questions in the group. I see both Mark and Andy do have microphones.
Everybody just, if you got a question, raise your hand. We'll bring the microphone to you right there. Andy, we got a couple on that side. I've got questions too.
Okay. So I know that there's been a couple ag-gag laws that have been tried to pass. So like basically like restricting free speech, like against like the agricultural world. And so but a lot of them have been banned because they do like restrict freedom of speech. And so like obviously like the First Amendment gives you the right to criticize, but agriculture has to paint the narrative of our farming practices are good. And I know that there's been one Iowa Supreme Court case that they did upheld the ag-gag law. And so I'm just wondering if we've seen those as being effective, or if it's just kind of more about the prosecuting of it, or if it's been effective in like stopping that too.
Do you want to take, Andy?
I can.
Would you take that one, please?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know what NPPC's policy is on ag-gag laws, so I'll speak for myself.
I didn't check the policy manual on that one yet.
So it is perplexing that a court would sanction criminal trespassing. Okay? I can't go break into, I was a news reporter. I can't go break into some private business and start filming or reporting, much less under secrecy, the guise of secrecy. And so I think it just offends common sense that a court would find and sanction the ability of people to trespass criminally into any operating business, much less a business that requires biosecurity and significant care for animals. We also know that when some of these videos that come out of that are highly distorted, you can't trust them. There's all sorts of things that you can do now with videos. They're using them for an agenda. And so I do know that in particular our Farm Bureau organizations are leading that fight in that particular space, and rightfully so. I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Oh, okay. I didn't know my mic was on. I'm Butch Baker, and I'm from Kentucky, by the way. So I'm retired, and my thought is, there's a lot of these so-called influencers when you get on the web, and and some of them are pro-ag. I just wondered, is there any way to connect those people together and help them with their information and they're kind of out there alone and they get beat up a lot. I think, thinking of the consumer sector, I think somebody needs to put that together to help those people and maybe help us find more people that make a difference and influence people in that medium. So that's just a thought. I don't know if anybody's, I guess it's a question too. Is anyone doing that?
I would love to talk about this, actually. I guess number one, we talked about World Without Cows. Our commitment with World Without Cows was to be science and fact-based. So even beyond the documentary itself, we are very focused on what we build out from there. And that includes a website that we want to work with any of you in this room who can contribute resources and fact-based information to that site, because we want it to be a repository of information as people ask questions, they're searching, because World Without Cows I'm happy for the general public to see it, but actually I am most interested in how World Without Cows is positioned with those who are influencing the narrative around agriculture. And that includes journalists, it includes policymakers, it includes the financial sector, it includes human nutritionists and doctors. And some of the misinformation I think that people are getting today when they go for a doctor visit and they're told don't have dairy, don't have red meat. And so we want to make sure that there is fact-based information that is there. But then we also want to build a community because agriculture needs more collaboration. I just at the Clear Center meeting a couple weeks ago, we had ING, a representative who leads their agribusiness segment, and she gave us a very pointed talk about how we don't have our act together as well as other sectors in terms of our collaboration, our unification, and our lobbying presence. And I think a lot of that starts with supporting and bringing together those influencers. And so for us, that's really part of a next stage of the impact campaign around World Without Cows is bringing together Planet of Plenty influencers, those who are telling those stories, and helping them to find community with one another, the resources, helping us build out those resources and get them in front of the right folks, because we all have a great network that we need to build the momentum around getting to. I don't know if you guys would have additions.
You want to take a swing at that, or?
Yeah, I think that influencers are incredibly important, right? In the world we live today, because we wake up to our cell phone, we say goodnight to our cell phone, and those folks are actively putting out good content, real content that is from the farm. And so I think everything that you are doing in order to bring that group together to provide perhaps a talking point, right, that a group can rally around is incredible. So I would just agree with your point that we need more influencers. We need unification, as you mentioned. The collaboration piece is important. And I believe between the industry associations and this world, right, from an allied industry perspective, the industry, we've got the right tools in place. We just need to maybe think on that a bit and build out a strategy.
The only other thing I would add, echo all of that, I think maybe 10 years ago, 10 years ago, there was a big push in this space. And a lot of Facebook and and getting people, trained up and an understanding of this. And then everything went to Twitter, or whatever what it's called now, X. And then everybody, you're building an audience. Then they change the algorithm, and now you don't have an audience. And then Instagram pops up, and now it's all about it. And so I think at some point there has been some fatigue set in as far as like, okay, how do I maintain an audience? How do I, and then it's caustic on social media. It's absolutely not how we talk to anybody else in any other part of public life. And so you have to have an incredibly thick skin to engage in that space. And I wouldn't ask anybody to go do that without full knowledge. And so then that really limits the pool of people who want to do that. When I was the state exec in North Carolina, we spent time on the ones who were willing and wanted to do it, and then made sure that they were really good at it. And you only need a handful, right? Mm-hmm. You only need a handful, and then you can get that out in the different areas. But we probably do need some renewed attention on, okay, what's our social media game look like? And how do those people who are willing to do that, do they feel supported and have the resources? Yeah, that's, I think, what you're saying.
And the one thing I would add to that is the role of AI. And I know we've all talked about it in various capabilities. Susanna, you've talked about it in terms of the Planet of Plenty website and getting more information on there for people to search for. Andy, I know we've talked about it in our board meetings. Like if somebody just Googled pig farming, like would the thing we want them to see really come up, or would it be bad information? So I think, number one, the power of AI and what can come up or what might not come up that would be favorable to us, but more importantly, getting that good information out there, populating more of that good information so that when somebody does a search on pig farming, accurate information comes up. Mm-hmm. So, Mark?
Hi panel, I work in communications for Australian Pork Limited, so the equivalent to your National Pork Board and Council. So I could have a million questions, but I guess this is a really big focus area for our team. And I'm really interested, Susanna, to know how you got those important producers on board for your film. Because we have people putting their hands up, but not necessarily representative of our whole industry?
You know, it's an interesting and good question, because I think I wish I had the filmmakers here to tell their side of this story, because it was without hesitation that every producer we asked to be part of World Without Cows said absolutely. And they said, what else can I show you? Where else can I take you? They opened their doors fully. And it was when our filmmakers actually sat down with an opposing point of view, the guy offhand, off camera said, gee, it'd be really nice if producers would really show us what's, and they said, actually they have, and they haven't hesitated. And he said, really? Really? They haven't kept you off farms? And I think part of that was, you know, they were coming connected with Alltech, a global business working in agriculture as journalists, but I think it speaks to the sector and to the willingness of producers to tell their story, that when they knew that there could be trust there and they were going to be treated fairly, they didn't hesitate because they knew their story was worth telling.
Yeah. Right. Yep. Good. Thank you, Andy.
Hi, all. Luis with the American Business Immigration Coalition. First of all, I want to say that as a former vegetarian, I'm really looking forward to watch this.
Did you say former vegetarian?
Former vegetarian.
Good.
I did my research, that's what I want to see, I want to say. I would like to know if you can tell us a little bit more of the scope of the problem. Like, is there any legislation that is coming your way? I'm asking because we are here networking with a lot of employers of immigrants, and we want to know, this is something that matters to us. We want our people to stay employed. So how is it that we can help, on that policy side of things?
Right. So I think your question is there legislation coming this way regarding this whole big topic? Would that
either state or national?
Yes, would be the short answer, yes. I think, and certainly Kylee can speak to a little bit about Oklahoma, Andy, maybe on a national level, but short answer would be yes. So.
Yeah, following California's 2018 Proposition 12, right, their ballot initiative, I think we have seen this trickle down of what other like state questions can we put into place. And you hear a lot of the National Pork Producers Council talk about a patchwork, right, of ways in which pigs are raised. And we know that today the pork industry in the U.S. it's a U.S. industry, it's a global industry, it's not a state-by-state industry. And so I think the short answer to your point, Lori, is yes, there has been enough stuff that has consistently happened that we have to do something about this, right? And we know that the opposition, their attempts are growing. Yeah?
Yeah, I would just say you would find here on your visit, I'm sure you know this, ready and willing partners, right? So we in agriculture know and support and appreciate the importance of immigration and immigrant employment. I don't even like the word labor, right? I said, yeah, workforce, employment. This is employment. And there's dignity in that. And so I think, but to answer your question on the policy piece of this, as you know, it gets very complicated and very much wrapped up in the most nationalized of politics. And agriculture has been a consistent voice for immigration reform, to ensure that there are employment opportunities in our industry. The truth is, it gets wrapped up in the larger politics of Washington, and that's why you don't see a lot of progress.
But I was asking about the issue of meat. Is there legislation coming after you saying that,
that you can't eat meat?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm not aware of specific.
We have seen states that have banned cell-cultured meat. There's probably about 5-ish right now, maybe, that have some bans on cell-cultured meat, but I have not seen any legislation on states that would ban the consumption of meat.
I think. And I would almost say.
Through production practices, right, and making that, that patchwork, what we call that patchwork of production practices. So whether it's California's Prop 12 and the restrictions there, or Oregon or New York State or wherever it might be, if you make it hard for us to raise pigs, we might not be raising pigs 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road. Yeah.
No question about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Other questions? Anyone? Well, while people are thinking, I've got a question. So, Andy,
Australia had another one. Okay, go ahead.
We're gonna come to Australia. He told us he could take all day.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So
I'm trying to get a trip to Australia out of this. What are you talking about?
Let's group up afterwards. So as my family is involved in large scale ruminant production, right? So thank you from a beef producer's perspective for what you did in Sonoma and in Denver. Mm-hmm. My question relates directly to that, and it builds off the question from the gentleman in the middle. From a tactical perspective, it feels like everybody in this room knows what to do. From a strategic perspective, as an industry, we suck, right? How do we get organized together, NPPC, National Corn Growers Association, NCBA, and all work together? Because we're not doing that today, at least on the surface. Can you talk to us about that?
Yeah, I think you're right that there's opportunity there for collaboration. Let me answer it this way. I think you have to find the issues, the right issues. You can run into, well, I can't be with you on, right? The coalition build becomes complicated at a certain point when people start thinking more about themselves, their industry, than the broader picture. And that happens. That happens. Those who oppose us are much more mature about coalition building than we are, okay? So that's one thing. We need to find ways to be understanding of what a true coalition building looks like. The other thing I would say is what came to mind as you were talking is politics. So, I mean, that's kind of the elephant in the room here, but most of this starts with politics, and we're here talking about policy and regulation and other areas of this, but it starts in politics. Okay, who gets elected is who decides all of this. And the problem for us in agriculture is we're really small. Okay, what do they say? 1%, 2%. Yeah. Okay, we don't spend a lot of money in politics. We don't have a lot of votes in politics, and so I think the opportunity for coalition build, where we could make a better impact, is actually in the political process as much as it is. You start getting into policy and regulatory. There's a lot of barnacles on that boat. There's a lot of history. And I wouldn't mind if we got engaged in the political space as a coalition build. I think it's easier and going to be more fruitful for us. So that's how I would react to that. Okay. I don't know if you have other thoughts.
No, I think you handled it well. So maybe one more question or to Australia?
All right.
Hello
I didn't see
again.
Australia that well.
Yeah.
But,
Are you ready for a
Their pink
20-hour
shirt.
flight, Andy?
I can see the pink shirts, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you say yes?
Lori, business class, you said? Yeah.
Did I say that?
I guess what the success of the film so far, do you put that down to having an agribusiness leading that project versus a national or state agriculture body?
I put it down to trusting these journalists and getting out of their way to tell a story that they brought journalistic ethics to and balance and perspective. I often think if we were doing this as part of a committee, we would still be making this documentary. Or we would have probably shut down the documentary because we would have spun in circles for so long. And so I think that's been a critical part of it was allowing them to tell the story through their lens and trusting it in that process. And allowing it to create conversation that I think illuminates more of it, because there's no way we do justice to all of the story within an 84-minute time frame. But it starts the conversation, which is the important piece.
I want you to, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Sure. Go one step further. When you first watched this film, there had to be parts where you're like, we got to get that out of here.
100%.
We can't have that in there. We can't have that in there.
Yes.
Right? I want to punch that guy in the face, what he just said, right? Talk about that maturity to say, no, I got to let that go. I think that's important.
There is, yeah. And it's something that maybe we don't talk about often, but there were intense conversations behind the scenes after the fact about certain elements of it. I would say there was a lot of courage on the part of our CEO to say, we're going to let this story be told. And I'm not afraid of the conversation because I believe in the story of what's being done globally through agriculture. So we're not afraid to, we're like a David, we're not afraid to walk up to the giant and have this conversation. But nevertheless, there were still some points that I argued to take out. They're still in the documentary today.
Yeah, I'm sure of that.
But that's part of having robust conversation around it, and I think from their perspective, incorporating the many different perspectives that are part of this conversation today.
Yeah. Good point. Any other questions, Andy?
Just.
I mean, you are like as good as this as I am.
I have a lot, but I think Australia would be a better place for me.
To handle those questions.
Yeah.
I got you.
2-hour presentation.
One more question. Yep.
Anyone?
And now we scared them all off, didn't we? Oh, Jeff's got a question.
I got you.
Hopefully this will be a short one. I've had the opportunity to hear Andy present before, and one of the things that struck me that he's mentioned is when you come up with the activist groups, there are 3 key things to keep in mind. One is they're very passionate, one is they're extraordinarily well-funded, and the other is that they play the long game. And I just wonder if you might reiterate how the Denver initiative, where that was in the timeline of their long game.
They are 3 years into research before they came out publicly in Denver, and they intend to get to statewide ballots 8 years after Denver. So it's a 10, 12-year plan. The same funders have a 20-year plan in another area. You're seeing that in octopus farming bans in Washington, California, Hawaii, New Jersey. Those, if you read the text of those bills, very easy to change the species in the future. There are other efforts that are 15-year plans, 30-year plans, so totally different time frame than how we think. Our publicly traded companies have to think quarterly. Our associations tend to think quarterly to semi-annually. We're just in a different frame of mind. And Kylee, you've seen this in Oklahoma, the time factor and how different it is as they've organized with you. Is that fair to say?
It would be fair to say. I've been in my role for about 4 years today, but this group that's active in Oklahoma, Joe Popwell, right, has been at this for 10, 12 years. And my predecessor can tell stories as to how they have tried to kind of really work on or target, push their agenda in the state of Oklahoma. So they are playing a very long game.
Yeah, good point. So as we wrap things up, it's been a great discussion, but if all this is a great discussion, we've only hit half the mark. So I have asked each of our panelists to have a call to action, a to-do for you as a group. So Andy, I'm going to start with you first.
Okay, I'm going to go with politics, if I may.
You may.
And I want you to think about the agricultural organizations that you're a part of and how people get to the board, how they have politicked to get to the board, how they have then operated in those organizations, and then it never translates beyond that for the most part. And I think we have trained up an entire huge group of people in all of these soy, corn, you name it, pork, never show up at a county commission office, never in a school board, never run for Congress, never run for a state office. I live in North Carolina, a very significant agricultural state. We have 2 farmers in the legislature, and they're both getting up there in years. If something happens to them, we're in trouble. And that's true across a lot of even our ag states. You start looking for farmers in these positions, and they are trained, ready, and able to do those jobs in politics. And that is a meaningful difference that we could actually do in agriculture. We have the skills. We just need to start to advance people a little bit farther along in the political process. That would be my call to action.
Sure.
Thank you, Andy. Kylee?
Yeah, mine would be similar, to get involved. Whether it's an association, as a customer of Alltech, clearly there are businesses, right, that see value in getting in front of fighting some of these things and unifying around it. So my suggestion would be just to get involved, and I think there is a role for everybody, whether it is everything you just articulated from a politics perspective, or it's through the people you do business with, and maybe you're going to become an influencer, but getting involved.
Susanna?
So, yes, I have a few, and actually there's the slide, but I might just skip to the next slide if you don't mind, because I'm going to actually boil it down to 3. I think number one is join us in sparking the conversation. I don't know if you saw if you were here yesterday on the fairgrounds, you saw a lot of our team walking around in World Without Cows shirts. That creates a lot of conversation. You have to be careful wearing these shirts because people will ask you, what does that mean? And sometimes they're about ready to have a fight with you on either side of the perspective when they see the shirt. So you have to be ready, but it's a great way to start having a conversation. Certainly, we talked a little bit today about the importance of having those conversations on social media and our networks, and also with our neighbors next door. The second part of it, though, would be pooling together resources. I mentioned that we are very focused on trying to build out a repository of content. And we have not been successful if that is only content from Alltech. I want us to be pulling together the facts and the science from all perspectives. And so if you look at our site and you have something to contribute, we would love to have that. And we have created a new entity, Planet of Plenty, that's just going to be focused on ongoing storytelling, science-based storytelling, advocacy, and education. And World Without Cows is just the flagship project. So maybe there is a pig-specific project in the future that will be part of that. And we want you all to be part of that with us. And the third piece of it is, it's one thing to dedicate resources to doing a documentary in-house for 3.5 years. It's a whole nother kettle of fish to actually get it out into the wider world. And so we need folks to come alongside us in terms of connections, in terms of even funding opportunities that get this documentary into more places and spaces to have the impact that we hope that it can have. And so we invite you to come alongside us in that effort, because we'll go much further and much faster when we're working together.
Yeah, thank you. You know, my call to action, and those of you that heard me speak this past year as president know that I said, show up. The world is run by those that show up. And so keep showing up. And I'm gonna maybe add a little twist to what you mentioned, Andy, and dovetail. The world is run by those that show up, but I will say, be the one that helps run the world by showing up. So with that, we thank you for being here and being part of this seminar. Thank you for your input. We are going to continue the conversation. Please join us in the Alltech tent. It's number EV 420, which is just basically right out the door to my right. There's flags on the top of the tent that say Alltech on it. So please join us. We've got food, we've got beverages, and we certainly want to continue this conversation. So thank you, everyone.